Welcome to lesson 3.4b on adverbial clauses. Adverbial clauses are another way of differentiating on when you use subjunctive versus the indicative. So you've had noun clauses, adjective clauses, and now we have our third and final adverbial clause. To start off, we need to know some adverbial expressions, and these are broken down into type 1 and type 2. So what I want you to do now on the flashcard, one of the flashcards you're given on the blank side, is go ahead and write type 1. And on the reverse, put these adverbial expressions. Para que, de modo que, de manera que, con tal de que, sin que, a menos que, a fin de que, antes de que, en caso de que. Also, I want you to write what they are in Spanish and what they mean in English. And these are type 1 adverbial expressions. So everything on that list that you just wrote is going to require the subjunctive afterwards. Any of those adverbial expressions, if you see them afterwards, you must use the subjunctive. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They require subjunctive. Here is our other list. Okay, so on your next note card, you're going to write type 2 on one side, and on the reverse, you're going to write cuando, donde, como, en cuanto, según, después de que, hasta que, luego que, mientras que, tan pronto como. You're also going to write the Spanish and English meanings. These are the second set of adverbial expressions, and we do not have accent marks for cuando and donde and como, okay, that they are written correctly. These adverbial expressions sometimes require the subjunctive and sometimes require the indicative. And we're going to talk about when we need to use each one. So remember, type 1 always require subjunctive. Type 2, we have to make a decision. That's why we're putting them on flashcards to help us remember which is which. So type 2 adverbial expressions, everything is based upon the dependent clause, or the front half of the sentence, what comes before the adverbial expression. And so if clause number 1, or the first half of the sentence, is in progress, then the verb in the second half of the sentence stays in the normal present indicative. So in other words, if I have the present tense or the present progressive in the front half, I'm going to stay with the present indicative in the second half. But if the front half of the sentence has not yet happened, in other words, it's in the future tense, or it's with like voi a or vas a, those indicate future actions. This event has not yet happened. If that's the case, then in the second half of the sentence, we need to use the subjunctive. So the two examples that I have are yo siempre me cepillo, present tense, los dientes después de que terminamos la cena. And that was the indicative. For the subjunctive, yo me cepillaré los dientes después de que terminemos la cena. So that's the future tense where I keep the AR and I add to it. And I had to use the subjunctive in the second half. So here's a little bit of a visual on what this is going to look like. So you have your adverbial expression. That's what you have to find. The first question you're going to ask, is it a type 1 or a type 2? If it's a type 1, you don't need to go any further. Conjugate verb number 2 into the subjunctive. However, if your adverbial expression is a type 2, you have to look to the first part of the sentence, that first verb. Does it indicate that it has happened, it's currently happening, or will happen? If the event is currently happening, then we have to use the indicative. If the event has not yet happened, we have to use the subjunctive. And again, that's only with type 2. Okay, now it's your turn to show me what you've learned. See you in class.